three different spaces. Like I said, you got to be artist and programmer inside one head. And you got to do it the right, render unto art the things that are art. So when you're thinking about the artistic issues, you damn well got to use the pattern-based, intuitive, artistic thinking. When it comes time to boil that down in computer code, now you turn on the engineer inside you and you write code. Don't mix the two up. That's horrible. But yeah, you got to keep. And where this is really important is in the tuning phase of a game. That is, you got the basic mechanics up and running. It works, but it's not a game yet. And you're trying to make it fun. And so you'll be playing it. The idea is you notice little things in you. That isn't right. That isn't right at all. At that point, you got to step back to the artist and say, well, what would I like it to be? And then you run over to the engineer and say, wait a minute, can I program that? And if he says, yeah, he'll say, well, no, you can't program that, but we could do something like this. And then you go back to the artist and say, well, would that be fun? And then you go back to the program. And this all has to happen. You got to get this job done in a year or so. So you can't afford to be carrying on this conversation with another person. It's got to go at the speed of light inside your head. So that's why you have to master both sides of that equation. And I will warn you, it's very difficult. One interesting piece of information, though, I've taught in Europe, and the two cultures problem is nowhere near so bad on the continent as it is here. And I think one reason for that is that the Europeans live surrounded by art. Wherever you go, there are these great buildings. They put statues up instead of parking lots. I have a great series of photographs contrasting America with Europe. But what I found is that the students there have much greater sensitivity to art, even the programmers. And so I actually think that the Europeans are going to lead the way on interactive storytelling. That doesn't mean that you can't do something, but I think as a culture, I think overall they will lead America.
I was wondering, you seem to want more social mechanics in games for the purpose of storytelling. It's something I've talked to a lot of people about. A lot of people are thinking about this once they're doing it, because at this point, I would say, well, it seems like a fool's errand to most people. But what I was wondering is most people seem to be approaching it from the perspective of, more competitive gaming games, how social mechanics can be applied to them. Do you have any comments on that?
Well, they're doing it fundamentally wrong. That's one reason why there have been so many mistakes. There are actually two basic classes of mistake that people make. The programmers make the mistake of thinking of a story as a tack-on, as something that embellishes the game or is a part of the game, adds to the competition or something like that. On the other side, we have all the traditional storytellers. Their problem is they don't understand interactivity. And I'll go even further and say they don't really understand at the deepest, most abstract level what a story is. We could say a story is a sequence of events. That's a that have some meaning. But the definition I prefer goes a little bit further and says that a story is a sequence of events that, taken as a whole, suggest some causal relationship about the human condition. And so the events themselves are unimportant. It's the relationships suggested by them. Luke Skywalker flew around, dealt with strange aliens, blew up the Death Star. That's the story? No. The story is that Luke Skywalker was a good guy, and he got a medal in the end. And an even easier version of another one is Darth Maul was a bad guy, and he fell down the bottomless pit. So that's just one of the messages. A lot of stories just have that basic message. Being good is worthwhile because we have so many temptations to be bad. And but there are lots more. Adultery, there are a million stories. And by the way, you might want to look some of that up. French guy in the 30s who came up with the 31 fundamental stories. Do you recall his name? Yes, that one. The 31 dramatic situations. Look that up because that'll give you an idea of story structure. The Russian guy who did the analysis of Russian folk tales. A lot of people look at that and say, "Oh my God, that's a programming language for stories." It isn't.
I think it is important that the students remember that it starts out with their premise. But
Yes.
the structure of the story that is appropriate for their premise is the one that they could perhaps work with or evolve or I really discourage them from like using something out of the box kind of approach. But and I think that at this point I want to like remake that point. Like we work so hard determining what a premise is, right, John?
Yeah.
And then coming up with your own, and then all of that work that you do in the classroom, where as your homework, is an extension of that premise, and then these sorts of decisions: what story structure, does it have story? What's the gameplay? What's the mechanics? What mechanics are going to support what this premise is?
Yep.
And I think that's where innovation is going to come from.
Absolutely. I'm going to go probably too far and suggest a way of developing a premise that might well be too narrow, but I would suggest that you build a premise as a statement about the human condition that has complex answers. If it's a statement that has a simple answer, like, if you murder somebody, you will go to jail. The game for that, you got a gun, there's a guy there. Do you pull the trigger or not? That's not a very fun game. But, a game like about adultery, boy, there's a good subject. Sexy woman, ooh, yeah. I got drunk. Oh no, what have I done? And gee, how many ways can that develop? And how do you try to handle it? Do you lie? Are you a good liar? All sorts of issues like that. And so you could make some sort of statement that adultery is probably going to be, in the end, you will probably regret it. And then you have to have all of the little different pathways. Oh, but don't ever use branching trees. Here's another important thing. Got to draw a picture again. This is the way too many people try to do a story. Once upon a time, there was an ugly frog, and he could either drink this strange substance, which might make him handsome, or he could eat a fly. And if he drinks the substance, then that turns him into a pig. But if he eats the fly, then this could happen or that could happen. And if this happens, then these different possibilities arise. This is called a branching tree. And it's the structure everybody tries to use. Don't ever use this. I suggest, no. You're just going to have to learn for yourself. Yes, do it someday. And then you'll realize just how stupid it is. What people don't get is that this thing explodes. This is exponential growth. People never understand it. There's an ancient story about an Indian mathematician who performed a service for a king. And the king said, "You can have anything you want. What would you like?" And he said, "I don't want much. Let's take a chessboard, 64 squares, and I want you to put just 1 grain of wheat on the first square, and then 2 grains of wheat on the next, 4 on the next, 8 on the next, and so on, doubling each time." That's all. And the king said, "Are you sure that's what you want?" And the guy said, "Yeah, I think so." Well, it turns out that the amount of wheat required to satisfy his demand would have taken more than all the wheat humanity has ever produced. Exponential growth is really fast. And a branching tree, you end up writing 10 steps into the story. If it's a binary tree, which is the smallest possible, you've got 1,000 leaves in it. Can you really write 1,000 different situations? And that's to get to 10 steps. You want to go a story 11 steps long, now you need to add another 2,000. 12, you're going to have to add 4,000. This gets out of hand really quick. The way you deal with it is with something in computer science called a directed graph, in which the circles and arrows can flow back in a loop, and but not in a oh yeah, punch. Oh yeah, that makes me mad. Punch. Oh yeah, that makes me madder. Punch. You know, and they get in a loop like this. And that's always embarrassing. You want much more subtle loops where you open a conversation by saying, "Hi there, Jim. How's it going?" And then you go through all this complexity, and then a little while later, "Hey, Joe, I haven't seen you in ages. How are you doing?" So you have repeatable verbs, but they're not set up in little tiny loops. So in fact, what you end up with is something that is somewhat branching, but has a lot of feedbacks in it. And the perfect, theoretically ideal game has every verb connected to every other verb. That's a mathematical ideal that can never be achieved, but that's what you're aiming for.